Hey there! In this video episode of Herald Tribune World Youth Forum, presenting their speeches at United Nations. It's really impressive that this teenager's showing amazing skills and courage in United Nations stage. Let's move to the video and watch them. Presenter of the discussion is Mrs. Helen Height-Waller. Education for what?
When this year's forum delegates were chosen last October, each one of them received a letter from the forum office, and it said in part, most visitors to a foreign country complain that they see so many sights that they never do get to meet the people. The letter went on to say, well, your complaint is going to be just the opposite. No one has really complained because I'm sure each one of the 34 delegates is aware that here in America it is people more than sights that are important, more important than sights except one sight. They have here seen the sight of our free public schools at work, educating a whole people. Each of the students has had 4 two-week periods, 4 intensive two-week periods in 4 different American host schools and communities, taking part in schoolwork along with their American student host. They've had a week in St. Louis, visiting the schools there, 3 days in Williamsburg, where they met together with the high school student council presidents from each of the 48 states. But now, to get some of their personal reactions to this intense experience at American high schools, I've called the delegates from Italy, South Africa, Sudan, Korea, and Iceland to the panel table. And I'm going to ask Françoise Monnier from France to start us off. Will you, Françoise?
Well, I think nearly all of us were very critical during the first weeks we were here. Because, you see, most of us, with a few exceptions, come from schools that admittedly are educating an intellectual elite. But now that we have had a chance to understand the purpose of American education, we have changed our ideas a lot.
Let me stop you right there, Françoise. Your conclusions later. But I think there's such ferment taking place in American education today that we would all rather like, if you will, like to have you give us your first very frank opinions, would you?
Well, I think the difference between our education and that of American teenagers is the thing that impressed me first. Well, I saw here that your schools are for everybody without any intellectual limit, and that the stress is on the social life, because half of your students are not able to go on with the academic. And I think that it shocked me because our schools, for example, the French lycée, are attended only by 50% of the teenagers, which are selected by a very hard competition all the time. In fact, the whole basis of our system is competition. And those who can't compete go to vocational schools until they are 14. And so that's why it surprised me very much, because the subjects you choose in high school are not purely academical. And well, I thought that your schools put too much stress on the social life.
Did you also say they encouraged intellectual laziness, or have you changed your mind on that?
Well, of course, because you have so much choice in your subjects, you choose the easiest. And to me, this encourages intellectual laziness. Also, the teacher doesn't require very much from you. And what would be the use of working hard if the teacher doesn't require it?
Oh, we'll come back to you in a minute, Françoise. Yes, Sang-mi from Korea.
In Korea, we not only study much harder than you, but also much more in quantity. We go to school 6 days a week, including Saturdays, and we have 6 or 7 classes a day. And we study about 18 subjects a year.
Did you say 18?
Yes, 18, not 8, 18. 18 subjects a year, including 3 languages, calculus, and trigonometry.
Oh, all right, Anne from Norway.
Yeah, I wondered about something, Mrs. Waller. American high school students are free to choose many of the subjects in high school. But the purpose of freedom is to let every individual develop to his full capacity. And I think the freedom of choice prevents this. It may sound like a paradox, I know that, but I think that the freedom of choice narrows your outlook, prevents your full development. You see, to most of us, all of our subjects in high school are compulsory. And I know it has done me personally good to take some subjects that didn't interest me at all at first.
Well, for example, Anne, you're going to be a linguist, I believe. What subjects have you had to take that didn't interest you?
4 years of maths, 2 years of physics, 1 year of chemistry and physiology, 2 years botany and zoology, biology, physiology. Those are things that doesn't have anything to do with languages. But it has done me good. And I think I can say that we are forced to think because of this. We're forced to use our brains in a way I haven't till now noticed that American students have to. I cannot see how your brains can function.
Yes, Ruth from Israel?
I agree with Anne. Freedom does narrow your outlook if there is no sense of responsibility to go with it. In my country, Israel, the students take school and study as a much more serious thing, and they have respect towards it. Maybe this is because of the special circumstances of my country. But when a student goes on to high school, he takes the responsibility on himself. He is responsible towards his parents who work hard to earn money and pay his school. The demands of the school are big. If he can't meet them, he can't stay. And he realizes that only through the education he gets that he can better his life and his nation's life.
My point is not that you study out of a sense of responsibility towards your country, but towards yourself. The subjects you choose in high school don't help each other to train your thinking. You don't learn to handle thoughts for the mere pleasure of being the most skillful, as we do. Even if it's foolish, well, this is the way we play the game.
I agree that the American schools do not accustom the student to systematic hard work. It seems that the teachers don't want to bother the students with homework. Once I was visiting...
Well, go on, make your point, Bashir. There's disagreement, but make your point.
I was visiting a class on a Friday afternoon when the teacher says seriously to the students, I don't want to give you any homework this weekend. I don't want to spoil your fun. It really surprised me. Because in my country, the teacher gives as much homework on a weekend, which by the way is 1 day, instead of 2 days, as you have in America. We don't stop our learning with a class bell. Most of our learning is done through the homework in which we train our minds to think and search. And here is another point. Once I asked an American student, why aren't you taking a foreign language? He said to me, I'm going to live the whole of my life in America. I'm not going abroad. I think it is a teacher to blame for not explaining to the students that to know other people and cultures, you have to know them through their languages.
Here's Mahipala from Ceylon. Do you have a point on that, Mike?
Oh, I think today we can't educate students to live on the blind assumption that the world will not be much different from 10 or 20 years from now. I suppose the American educational system developed in such an atmosphere, but doesn't the country's educational system have changed as fast as a country's position in the world changes?
Yes, Saroj from Thailand?
Now I'm sure that the Russian education is far more advanced than the American education. There are so many reasons. One of the reasons is this. Last year there was a meeting in Moscow for students from all over the world. And we sent our representatives from Thailand too. When they got out of the airplane, some Russian students met them. And they were surprised because the Russians could all speak Thai language fluently. And when asked how they learned it, they said they learned it in their own school.
May I interrupt, Mrs. Wallace?
Yes, go ahead, Ike.
The subject of this discussion is education for what? Maybe the Russians do educate their students better, but do they do it freely and so that they become free citizens? That's the question.
Yes, Bjorn?
I think it was Oscar Wilde who once said, the old Icelanders were very wise people. They saw America 500 years before Columbus, but they didn't tell anybody. The Icelanders today are probably not as wise as their ancestors were, but they are wise in one thing, I am sure, that education is the most expensive item on our national budget every year. In America, I believe you spend much, much more on defense than education.
Yes, I really believe that education must be considered more important than defense. In a certain way, education is the defense of a free people. And, well, in Italy, we discuss a lot of the crisis in our school. But as usual, there is more talk than action. And, well, when I first came here, I had many prejudices against my school. And now I've lost some of them. Being in yours has made me appreciate mine a little more. and our teachers, they are like dictators. They are so conceited and stiff. Sometimes they don't even seem to be human beings.
And sometimes American teachers do not dictate enough.
You say sometimes American teachers don't dictate enough. You say those in Italy dictate too much.
Oh, yes, sir.
And you say ours don't enough. Well, go on.
No, don't dictate enough. Since I have been here, I always found that the lesson is very interesting, and more interesting when the teacher is old and strict. The young American teacher, the product of
I missed that word. You say the lesson is interesting when the teachers are old and strict.
Yeah.
But the young
American teachers seems to know much about how to teach than what to teach. And here comes the Sputnik. It gives a very convenient excuse to the students to blame their schools.
I also think there is too much emphasis on sports in your high schools. The basketball players and wrestlers are the school's idols, while the scholastic achievements don't get the attention they deserve. The one thing which the world doesn't need today is basketball.
Well, remember, you said that. The one thing the world doesn't need today is basketball. What do you say to that, Rena?
I disagree with what you said at first. There is not too much emphasis, but the wrong kind of emphasis.
On sports, you mean, in American schools?
Here, sports belong to a small elite, the team. The majority of the students only go to games to watch the others play.
But you don't understand at all, Rena. The Americans don't go to basketball games to watch the teams. Oh, no, they go for two other reasons. One is yelling. Oh, boy, the Americans have really... I say the Americans have really opened up my eyes to the value of yelling. For the time being, I can only think of one thing I like better than cheering, and that is cheerleaders. Wow, wow. The man who invented them, I think he really made a great contribution to the pursuit of happiness in this world. But I do have one complaint. American schools are too big. When you have once seen the pretty girl in a school, it's too hard to find her again.
Now, may I go on, please? What I wanted to say is that when we have sports at school, it means that about 300 students will take part. A whole Saturday is set aside for sports, and many games of all different kinds are played. This is much more democratic, for here everybody gets a chance to be a hero on the field. Many of us felt that, far from democratic, American schools are really undemocratic. By lumping the gifted and the less gifted together, neither gets a fair chance.
Oh, may I interrupt? You must remember, Rena, that a few American schools are beginning to separate students according to ability, and we must recognize it.
Good, we will.
Something else that we found undemocratic is the fact that you don't wear school uniforms.
They will kill you.
Goodbye. School uniforms are much more democratic, for they cut right across class lines.
But there aren't any classes in America to cut across. And haven't you noticed that even though the American students don't wear uniforms, they all seem to look alike?
And they...
and they all talk alike. Right after coming here, the first thing I noticed about the American students is that what they talk about most of the time with each other is mostly gossip, especially boy-girl relations. Wherever I go, I have been hearing the students here talk about that so many times that now I'm sick of it. I cannot stand it anymore. Well, of course, we talk about our gossip too, but not constantly as you do here, and not always that same particular subject called dating. We talk more about our studies. Right, I'm sure. And we never waste our time worrying about our clothes and making up our faces.
Here's Ben Kofi from Ghana. Yes, Ben?
Excuse me. I've heard enough criticism about the American form of education. I have always been in favor of the American form of education, and after 3 months in this country, I'm more in favor of it than ever. We in Ghana achieved our independence only a year ago, and we need a mass production of educated people. That is far more important for us than individual intellectuals. It is the middle class of people that develop a nation, and not isolated intellectuals. I feel America is great, and it's a fast developing country. It has the highest standard of living in the world today just because of its educational system. It prepares a student to take on responsibilities after schools.
Getting into something here.
Well, I feel that the Americans stress on what the Greeks advocated for, versatility, a sound mind in a sound body.
May I interrupt as an Athenian? At least I find a chance. I'd like to say that I've seen here in many schools that in art classes, they actually teach advertising. Now, this in Greece would be incredible, and of course it certainly amazed me. But well, it's very good way to use art, if art can be used and still remain art.
Ben, just a second. I cut Rena off a second ago. Did you want to come back to that point Anne made, Rena?
Yes, I would like to come back to a point Anne made earlier. I suggest that some enforced conformity in schools, such as required subjects, discipline, uniforms, and separate schools for boys and girls, create more real freedom in the end. This may sound illogical, but my personal experience in American high schools was that everybody knows he is real free, and he feels he has to act in that way. And then he becomes a slave to conformity without knowing it.
Okay, Ben, over to you now. Did you want to answer? Tell us more about why you prefer the American system than your system in Ghana.
Well, may I go on? My form of education develops a bookworm, a stupid, lopsided intellectual who cannot fix a flap tie. It was imposed by the British people who needed people to work in the offices and to train civil servants, and I feel it is out of date. It taught me more about Australia, Canada, America than I know about my neighboring African states. But to work towards the United States of Africa, I feel I must know more about them.
Yes, Na from Vietnam.
I would like to tell you something, Ben. At least in your country, you have only one system of education, the British colonial one. But in my country, we have two systems, the French and the Vietnamese one. And the French was much better just because a boy with a French diploma can find a job much more easier. But it means that we have to learn French as our native language and Vietnamese as a foreign language in high school when we take the French system. And it was a shame. Now that we have our own government, it is difficult to change or to unify our system of education without damaging students. But the worst thing is that some people still think that they still have a good opinion on those students who took the French system.
I guess we know nothing really about educational problems until we realize that in your country you have to work out a system with two different languages. How about the Philippines, Patsy?
Oh, I just have to say something to that. When Spain came over to rule the Philippines, they acted like the British in Ghana. Oh,
Well, education was for a selected few, but when the United States came over, one of the very first things they did was to establish schools. Right now, I would say that the Philippines is the only former colonial area in both Asia and Africa that has free compulsory education up to the 6th grade. Oh, but we have a language problem similar to Vietnam too. What language should we use as a medium of instruction in schools? Almost all our textbooks are in English. Right now we are experimenting as to the use of the vernacular in the primary grades. But the real trouble is that there are 87 different dialects now in use in the Philippine Islands. Well, as to that other question, I would say that I'd rather have a well-adjusted blockhead to a maladjusted egghead. At least a well-adjusted blockhead can still find happiness.
I would like to ask my African neighbor a question. If you could, would you rather have the American system of education in Ghana now or the system you have here?
Sure, certainly.
You'd rather have the America. How about you in Sudan back there?
I wouldn't, not quite yet. I think your country and mine are still in a period when we need intellectual leaders more than educated masses. We have to concentrate for more few years on producing doctors, scientists, experts, educationalists who will reward the nation in the near future by educating the masses. And this reminds me of something important. When we criticize the American system of education, we forget that each of us has been sifted and sifted many times before we even reach the high school and then selected from the whole country to come here. The American students we meet represent the whole population. And something surprises me very much. In my country, a high school graduate is considered more or less an educated person of an educated class, while in America, a street cleaner can be a high school graduate.
Yes, Bjorn from Iceland?
The American system certainly serves its purpose. The purpose of keeping the teenagers under the guidance of teachers for 12 years, keeping them out of the labor market and educating them equally. I doubt if anywhere in the world one can find a large nation with the average man more public-minded and more capable of social activities than here.
Well, at last you give me a chance to say what I wanted to, and
Excuse me, turn the mic around to you, Marcy.
Yeah, you interrupted me, you know. I was going to say that our school system in Italy, and I think it's true in many other countries, was good to educate the elite. But now that it has to educate the mass, it's a failure. Instead of adapting the school to the mass, they try to adapt the mass to the school. And the result of this in Italy is a very, very serious problem, which we call reversion illiteracy. This means that when the people finish the required numbers of years in a school, not meant for their needs, they become illiterate again. And perhaps this is why for many Italians, especially in South Italy, there is no relations between education and a better life.
Just a minute, Omar. I want to ask Ibrahim from the Lebanon about your experience in the Lebanon and the different kinds of schools.
Well, we used to have two systems of school, a French one and the Lebanese one. But my school took a mixture of them. And the Lebanese teach about 14 subjects, while the American teaches 4 only. We took a mixture and we had 8. And this make a good combination, I would think.
Thank you. I wanted you to give us that because Lebanon does seem to have a mixture of the European system and the American. How about you? Oh, this is Omar from Morocco.
Well, I like to tell to Marcella that I don't think we can have ever this problem of education mass in Morocco, where there was a 90% illiteracy under the colonialism, because people are too eager to learn, to read and write. 1 month after we got our independence, a League Against Illiteracy was created. Many volunteers offered to teach the mass, thirsty to learn. Very easy books were printed, a special newspaper created. Well, boys as girls take part, because the fight is the same for women as for men. Many educational projects are organized. Last summer there were about 12,000 people altogether. Those who are students teach those who have not been to school. while they thought they work all together and built a road of 40 miles, joining the former French part to the Spanish former zone. Well, we don't have this problem of educating the mass in our country.
Yes, Ike, go ahead.
I have been complaining about the lack of individual thought that I've seen here. And maybe it is so, but now I come to think that the application of the idea of freedom, recognizing the rights of the individual, does exist more in the average American than in the average, which means uneducated Greek. And I think that maybe we should try to adopt a system that would take care of the people, of the mass, as you have done here. But I wonder if we can do that without neglecting the gifted, as I see that has happened here. And, well, I'm sure sometimes that all the world is moving towards the goal of mass education that has already been achieved in America. We've started in this direction.
What would you say, Krishnan?
Well, I think I would say that your system is our solution, and ours is your remedy. Indian education has become severed from its moorings, and turns out too many brilliant social misfits. Perhaps America could use a few more. Our biggest social problem is the gulf between the educated and the uneducated. You have closed this gap so well that education here seems insubstantial. Somehow it does not challenge the student enough. It's becoming less a vital, creative process than the imposition of a stereotype. Tastes must not only be fed, but also cultivated.